Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we'll discuss the different herbs we grow here on the homestead. Let's get going. We talk a lot about the different vegetables that we grow here on the homestead, but we rarely speak about all of the herbs. So today I just wanted to take a second and go through what we're growing and kind of what we use it for. There's a few advantages actually to growing your own herbs. I don't know if you've been to the grocery store lately to buy fresh herbs, but they're stupid expensive. So you can buy a pack of seeds for a reasonable price, grow 15, 20 of those plants, and it's easily worth your time and effort. There's also a lot of holistic benefits to using fresh herbs, and we'll make a video about that over the spring. Leslie has an idea for next spring to go over all of those, but just as a general rule, there's a lot of healthy benefits to eating fresh herbs. And the final benefit that I wanted to just mention here is when we go through on the homestead, and of course we have self-sustainability as one of our key goals. And when I go through and I plan how to preserve our vegetables, having the fresh herbs like dill, basil, thyme, that sort of stuff, it makes the preservation part a lot easier, and it gives me a lot more options when it comes to how to season the different tomatoes or even our pickles. We can add different flavors to those. So let's go ahead and take a look at the different herbs that we grow here on the homestead. Oscar, you enjoying this weather? Yep, me too. Rosemary is a favorite herb here on the homestead. Now it's a perennial. You're able to plant it and you will have it for many years to come. As you can see, they come in these small to medium size bushes. This one's probably only, I don't know, 30 inches tall or so. They can get as tall as like 4.5 foot. They'll last sometimes up to 10 years from what I've heard. We use our rosemary in baking. I like to put it in my bread from time to time. You can also add it to pasta or sauces. It also pairs really well with a rich red meat, a steak or a lamb chop, or roasted chicken. Thyme is another herb that we really enjoy here. Now, thyme can be a bit tricky to start, but once you get it going, it does well. Here in Zone 7B, it's a little hot, so you need to make sure it gets a little shade. We use thyme in a lot of roasted foods. Like anytime I put a roast, whether it be beef or pork, I also like it in roasted vegetables. Parsley is another herb that we enjoy growing here on the homestead. Parsley, it can be a little difficult, much like thyme, like we just discussed about. It can be a little difficult to get started from seed, but once you do, it does well here in Zone 7B. But again, like the thyme, it does need a bit of shade throughout the day. So if you can get it, 6 to 7 hours of sun and shade the rest of the day, it will thrive in the warmer areas. Parsley is famous as like a garnish, but the reason for that is it's a palate cleanser. It has a really nice light flavor to it. It goes well in almost anything. I like to use it in my soups and roasted vegetables, but I will usually throw it on at the end as opposed to roasting it with the vegetables or cooking it long term in the soup. Once those two things have finished, I'll put it on in the end and allow the residual heat of whatever I'm cooking to sort of bring out the oils and the smell of the parsley. But by and large, I like to make sure that I keep it as fresh as possible when using it on any dishes. Basil is easily my favorite herb that we grow. It's getting late into the season here. It's about mid-August or so, and you can tell we've allowed our basil plant to sort of, they call it go to seed once they start getting these blooms on it. Our bees absolutely love these flowers. They're very fragrant, and up here at the tops you can see, let's get in there a bit, but you can see those little folds. That's where your seeds will develop. So we'll let 2 of the 6 plants will leave here to go through the whole seed or the flower process, and we'll collect the seeds from those. Basil is really good about reseeding itself. So If you have an area that you just want to be a basil bed, all you'll need to do is go ahead and leave 1 to 2 plants throughout your garden, and it'll go through this whole process with the flowers, and it'll drop seeds, and the next year when the time comes, your plants will come up. It's a really good way to do it if you can manage, because those seeds will be more tolerant to your exact area. The ones that come up, that means they thrive in that area. And you know, if you do that for many years, it's quite possible that you will have your own sort of unique strand of basil, unique to your specific environment. We use basil in just about everything. I like to take the larger leaves from the bottom and I'll cut those up with my fresh salads. I also will use these in all of the pasta sauce. Anything that's got a tomato in it, I like to go with basil. I also enjoy it with beef. As far as if I'm making like a sauce or something to go over a roast beef, I'll put basil in that as well. Oregano, much like rosemary, is going to be another perennial. Once you plant it, it will spread out. As you can see, this guy is done. Each year you can just go through and harvest the tops, where you'll see the end of the year, you'll see here how the leaves kind of populate at the top, and then underneath down there it'll be the longer stems. That just happens as the heat comes on. So you can go through and take, you know, the top 8 inches or so and hang those out to dry. And you can save them for the winter time and the early spring before they start blooming again. Oregano goes good in almost anything. It has a real earthy flavor. My favorite thing to do with oregano is to add it into my vinaigrettes, because it does, you know, it takes that, it kind of off balances that vinegar taste really well. It goes really good in anything that you want to have like an Italian or a Tuscan flair to it. Sage is another favorite herb of ours around here. Sage goes really well with things like pork. It also goes well with chicken, and it goes really good in soups. You can dry it out. One of my favorite ways to use it is if I'm doing a stuffed pork loin, add fresh sage in there. If you dry it out, it's also a favorite to use around Thanksgiving whenever you make your turkey dressing. Sage is super easy to start from a seed. In fact, whenever it starts, you'll probably end up with more than you need because it spreads pretty rapidly. Lavender is another herb that we grow here on the homestead, and you can tell it's looking, I don't know, a little sad, but that's because it's late August and lavender is more of a cooler weather. It is starting to come back into its own. You can see these flowers coming on and they smell incredible. What you want to do is you'll get 2 blooms out of your lavender through the course of a year. You'll get the one in the early spring, and then you'll get the one in the early fall. We like to just let them go, and then once the colors have kind of come off the flowers, that's a good example right there, you can take that, dry it, and the actual flower part of the lavender is really good for inducing sleep. So you can take it and infuse it in honey and use the honey in some chamomile, or you could, if you have an infuser ball, you can just pour hot water over your infuser ball with the lavender flowers in there, and it makes a really nice nighttime tea if you're having difficulty sleeping. I would also like to mention dill while we're discussing our herbs. Now, we've already used all of the dill for the year in our pickled okras and our cucumbers, but we plant it in the early spring. Now, dill is the only herb that we do not start before we put in the ground. We actually direct sow our dill. Seems to do better that way. We wait until it starts to warm up, you know, about maybe the first weekend of May or so before we plant it. It's not real easy to start because you'll put out a lot of seeds. Dill seeds are really small. You'll put them out and you won't get as many plants as you'll think. But once they get started, there's not a whole lot of maintenance to them. Just make sure they have water like all the rest of them. But other than that, they come up really well. Now, the difference is you'll want to make sure your dill gets plenty of sunlight, because what you want from your dill are the big flower clusters. That's where you get your flavor for your canning. So you'll want that because that's where the seeds are at. So, but dill is fantastic. Primarily, we use it for, for pickling. but which I think most people here in the South do. But you can also add it to yogurts and that sort of stuff for sort of a Mediterranean type flavor. If you like gyros, that kind of stuff, it does make a really good tzatziki sauce with some Greek yogurt and dill and that sort of stuff. Well, our final thoughts here on the herbs that we grow on the homestead. I failed to mention a thing called a sweet bundle of herbs. If you're doing any traditional recipe, if you got it from your grandmother or your great-grandmother, or perhaps you found a chicken soup recipe or something from the early 19th century, they will often mention a bundle of sweet herbs. Now, those traditionally will include sage, rosemary, basil, and oregano. Now here on the homestead, when we make our sweet bundle, we usually do them equal parts except for oregano, because oregano has such an earthy flavor, it tends to overpower the other sweet herbs. So when we do it, we use half of the oregano that we use of the other. So the good way to do that is just take a sprig, which is, just pick, I don't know, 6 to 8 inches from each one. And whenever you do that, take 2 from the rosemary, 2 from your basil, 2 from your sage, and only 1 from your oregano. And I think you'll really like the balance that that gives your soups. Well, if you've made it to this point, I would like to say thank you. We really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, consider hitting the like button. It goes a long way in getting our content recommended to other folks. If you have not, please subscribe to the channel. It does help us out, and it's free for you. Until next time, I hope that all you folks take care of yourselves. Peace.